Stephanie Okechukwu stands 7 feet 1 inch tall, the tallest women's college basketball player in NCAA history. Texas Tech signed her in January 2026. She still hasn't played a single minute. NCAA is standing in her way. The headlines in Lubbock promised something the sport had never seen. Texas Tech had just signed a 7'1" center from Nigeria, a player whose wingspan stretches 7 feet 4 inches and whose very presence would shatter the NCAA record books. Stephanie Okechukwu's arrival was supposed to be a turning point, not just for the Lady Raiders, but for women's college basketball itself. The press release went live on January 2, 2026. Her name appeared on the official roster that same day, dwarfing every other player on the list by nearly a foot. For a program whose tallest player in recent memory stood 6'3", this was more than a new recruit. It was a seismic, historic event. Yet weeks passed, then months. Game after game, the arena filled with anticipation, but Okechukwu never took the court, not for a single minute. The tallest woman in NCAA basketball history, a 21-year-old from Umuneochi, Nigeria, who speaks English, Igbo, and Japanese, remained on the sidelines. Coach Krista Gerlich confirmed the reality that fans could barely process. Stephanie would not play in the 2025 to 2026 season. The NCAA eligibility process had stalled her debut, and no timeline for resolution was given. The contradiction could not be sharper. Here was a player recruited by programs across the country, including Kansas, whose journey had already crossed 3 continents, now stuck in limbo by a wall of paperwork and silence. While comparisons to Victor Wembanyama circled in the media and her potential impact was debated by analysts, the only certainty was her absence. The promise of a historic signing, frozen in place, became a source of mounting frustration for everyone watching. The question echoing through every empty minute: how can a player who broke the mold be kept from even stepping on the floor? Stephanie Okechukwu's story begins in Umuneochi, a rural corner of southeastern Nigeria where basketball courts are rare and dreams of the NCAA seem impossibly distant. Her family spoke Igbo at home and English at school, laying the groundwork for a life that would cross borders and languages. There were no youth leagues or formal coaches, just makeshift hoops, borrowed balls, and a determination that set her apart even before her height did. The first move came early. By her teens, Stephanie was on a plane to the Philippines. The details of her time there are scattered. No official club records, no box scores, but the pattern is clear. Each stop required her to adapt to a new system, a new language, a new way of being an outsider. Even as the paperwork from this period remains elusive, what is certain is that she kept moving forward, learning to navigate unfamiliar cities and classrooms, always chasing the next level of competition. Japan offered structure, and for the first time a real team environment. At Fukuchiyama Seibi High School in Kyoto, she learned Japanese from scratch, balancing language classes with daily practices and the strict discipline of Japanese athletics. Living in a boarding house with teammates, Stephanie found herself immersed in routines that demanded both resilience and flexibility. Here, her height became more than an oddity. It became a weapon. Game film from the All-Japan High School women's basketball tournament shows her defending the paint against players nearly a foot shorter, her 7'1" frame and 7'4" wingspan impossible to ignore. Through every transition, her family's support remained constant. The sacrifices, leaving home, missing birthdays, learning to communicate in 3 languages, were the price of a dream that, for most, would have ended long before a Texas Tech recruiter ever picked up the phone. Each document, each visa, each transcript collected along the way now sits in a file, waiting for approval. The journey that began on the dusty streets of Umuneochi has been anything but straightforward, and every mile traveled now hangs in the balance, subject to the judgment of an opaque eligibility process. Stephanie Okechukwu's name sits atop the Texas Tech roster, but the numbers beside it tell a story that has never been written before. The official listing is 7 feet 1 inch. Her wingspan is 7 feet 4 inches. These are not just outliers, they are statistical earthquakes in women's college basketball. Until now, the NCAA had never seen a woman taller than 6 feet 10 inches take the floor. That record, held by players like Olivia Mickelson and Allison Rogers, stood as the outer limit of what seemed possible for the sport. Okechukwu's arrival moves the goalposts by a full 3 inches, a leap that would be unthinkable in any other era. On the Lady Raiders 2025 to 2026 roster, the next tallest player measures 6 feet 3 inches. The gap between Okechukwu and her own teammates is nearly a foot, a difference that, in basketball terms, is not just rare but almost mythic. She stands 10 inches above the tallest Texas Tech player in recent memory, and a full head above nearly every opponent she would face. The sheer scale of that advantage is difficult to grasp until you see her name in the same column as the rest. One number, 7 feet, 1 inch, that makes the rest of the list look like it belongs to a different sport altogether. This is not just a novelty. In a game defined by inches, Okechukwu's presence would force every coach in the Big 12 to redraw their playbooks. Her size offers a competitive edge that no women's college team has ever been able to deploy. For Texas Tech, it was supposed to be a revolution. For the NCAA, it may be a disruption they are still struggling to process. The record books have a new entry, but the player herself remains a question mark, present on paper, absent where it matters most. A player standing 7'1" with a 7'4" wingspan isn't just a spectacle, she's a tactical earthquake for women's college basketball. Biomechanical models, like those used by Texas Tech's Sports Science Lab, show that a defender with Stephanie Okechukwu's reach can contest more than 70% of all shots taken within the paint. In practice, that means opponents are forced to change their offensive schemes, often settling for lower percentage jump shots instead of attacking the rim. Numbers from the Women's Basketball Analytics Consortium estimate that every extra inch of standing reach can drop opponents' field goal percentage in the lane by nearly 0.5%. Applied to Okechukwu, that is a projected 5 to 7% defensive boost, enough to swing close games and force rival coaches to rewrite their playbooks. But the same physical gifts that make her a defensive anchor come with real risks. Sports medicine studies on extremely tall female athletes, like the work of Dr. Ayodele Okonkwo at UT, warn that knee joint stress and limited lateral mobility can raise the chance of injury, especially for players above 6'10". For Okechukwu, every step, pivot, and landing carries more force than most athletes ever experience. The margin for error narrows as height increases, and the history of 7-foot women's basketball players is littered with careers shortened by stress fractures and ligament tears. Proper conditioning, strength training, and careful load management can help, but the risk never disappears. The tactical fallout is clear. Get her on the court and Texas Tech could transform overnight into a defensive powerhouse. Keep her sidelined and the program's revolution remains hypothetical, her physical edge trapped in a file, waiting for clearance. The numbers tell the story of what's possible, but the clock keeps ticking without a single minute played. The NCAA Eligibility Center issued a hold notice on Stephanie Okechukwu's file just weeks after her signing, freezing her case under the identifier TC 2025's Evan. The official reason was incomplete documentation and questions about her amateur status during her time in the Philippines. Texas Tech's compliance staff submitted every transcript, travel record, and team roster they could gather, including a formal request for an international transfer certificate from the Japan Basketball Association on November 5, 2025. But as the days turned into months, no international transfer certificate arrived, and the NCAA 30-day window for a decision quietly slipped by. The case file sat on hold, the petition for a mid-season exception expired, and the season moved on without her. For a player whose journey crossed continents and languages, the roadblock was not an opponent or an injury, but a missing piece of paperwork and a silent inbox. The process that should have taken weeks now threatened to erase an entire year of eligibility, with no answers and no accountability from the governing body. The ripple effect of Stephanie Okechukwu's stalled debut isn't limited to Texas Tech or the NCAA record books. Professional scouts are watching with growing impatience, knowing the clock is already ticking on a player who could redefine the WNBA's future. The last time a woman over 7 feet played professionally was Margot Didek, a 7'2" Polish center who reshaped the league's defensive strategies from 1998 to 2008. Since Didek's retirement, no one has come close to matching her size or impact. Okechukwu, at 7'1" with a 7'4" wingspan, is the only prospect in a generation who even enters that conversation. Franchises like the Indiana Fever have quietly adjusted their draft boards, projecting Okechukwu as a potential first-round pick if she can log enough college minutes to prove her durability. Internal scouting reports describe her as a defensive anchor with game-altering reach, but every missed season chips away at her development curve. League strategists see the delay as more than a personal setback. It is a lost opportunity for the sport to evolve. The WNBA has never had a player with her combination of height and mobility. Each month she spends in eligibility limbo, the chance to witness a true outlier in action slips further away, leaving teams and fans alike to wonder what the next era of women's basketball might look like if bureaucracy keeps winning. Right now, a 7'1" talent born in Umuniochi, fluent in 3 languages and signed by Texas Tech, remains sidelined by paperwork. The NCAA bureaucracy overshadows a once-in-a-generation journey. For Stephanie Okechukwu, the dream is on hold. For everyone watching, the question is, why should it be?